I did send everybody draft language last night reflecting our consensus on PLC time at the elementary level, but since we have Allison here and maybe everyone hasn't had an opportunity to look at that yet, I thought it might make sense to go ahead and do our presentations, if everybody's okay with that. Allison and Jill and I had like a second to confer this morning about the order of presentations because Allison shared with me that her compensation presentation includes sort of the punchline, I guess I'll say, from the supplemental group's work. And so just know that that's in there. And then we'll do our presentation on the supplemental schedule, and information about where that number comes from and what the recommendations are will be shared. And then we will also have our salary schedule group present. So I think it's just all going to be informational presentations this morning, and then we'll let Stephanie facilitate us from there. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so I'm going to get out a notepad because I think better when I write things down, but we're ready when you're ready, Allison. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I'm Allison Starosky, Budget Manager. Russ usually does this presentation, but he had a family thing, so he couldn't attend. But we're just going to have a very condensed presentation because I believe everybody was able to watch the board meeting Monday night. Everybody did their homework. So I only have about 5 slides for you, very condensed. So if we could just maybe hold questions to the end, and then we can go over whatever questions you may have at that point. So this is what was presented Monday night to the board. As you can see, we have projected a $1.9 million surplus for the 22-23 school year. That's that line in blue. We're looking at that column in yellow there. It does stay within that 10 to 15% cash balance, leaving a cash balance of 12% there at the bottom in the orange. This does not include any compensation. So whatever you guys discussed today, it doesn't include any compensation for any of the pay groups so far. So that $1.9 million will have to cover all pay groups.
What about column movement, though? I didn't mean to scare you. Sorry.
Well, I heard it from above, and I wasn't sure where it came from. It does, you are right. It does include the $800,000 for professional growth. Thank you. We do have the board policy DBB, which says that we need to maintain a cash balance between 10 to 15%. Anything below 10%, we would have to implement budget reductions to maintain a minimum balance of 8.3% of our expenditures. So right now, the board did give authority to allow us to go down to that 10% cash balance, which gives us a $4.5 million to provide compensation for all pay groups.
Compensation increases, right?
Yes, compensation increases.
It includes it.
So this slide shows what that $4.5 million, if we implemented it for pay raises for all pay groups, what the ending cash balance would be. So we would have a $2.6 million deficit and have a 10% cash balance. But it still would adhere to that board policy DBB, which maintains that we need to have that 10% cash balance. So taking that $4.5 million, we determined that the best way to cost out that for all pay groups is to determine how much each percentage of our pay groups maintains the entire salary bucket. So certified makes up 73% of all the compensation. So if we apply that 73% to that $4.5 million that we just talked about, it would leave that cash balance of $3,283,000. So we determined that this would be the best method that wouldn't violate that board policy. So we're we're still keeping within that 10% cash balance. And we've identified that 73% is solely for certified, so it wouldn't impact any of the other pay groups for their compensation. So again, if that $3.3 million is applied for certified compensation, plus we have that $800,000 that we discussed that's already been budgeted for. We have $0 for health insurance increase, since we kind of talked about already the premiums did very well this year. It actually went down, so it would be a $0 cost to the district for the health insurance. So in total, there is $4 million that will be available for certified compensation. Again, that $800,000 has already been budgeted, but it is part of the certified compensation. In addition, the board plans to provide that $700 retention from ESSER, similar to what we did last year. That still needs to go through the state task force, and State Board of Education needs to approve the application we sent through, but we're hoping that sometime this summer we can have the board bring that to their board meeting, and that would be an additional $700 for all pay groups, certified, classified, everyone. Lastly, I think this is what you guys are looking for, is your salary cost factors. So applying 1% on base would be about $1.3 million for just the certified piece. This doesn't include any of the other pay groups. A step would be about $1.8 million. That professional growth, of course, is $800,000 that we already talked about. And then, not to steal the subcommittee's thunder, but I have cost out those revisions to the supplemental schedule to be about $161,000. So, however the IBB team decides to apply these cost factors within that $4 million bucket, is what we're looking at for the compensation for just the certified piece. Mm-hmm.
I'm on first. Did you save this in our folder so that we can reference it later?
I
If you
have
email it
not,
to
but I
me,
can.
if you email it to
Okay.
one of us, we can put it in the folder.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to say, if you put it in that same folder that we've been using,
Okay.
we can access it too.
Okay. I
Thank
can do
you.
that. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what deficit spending means for next year?
Yes, so when you do deficit spend, it's a difficult situation because if you use that money for reoccurring costs, which is basically what salary increases are, that just will go towards next year's cash balances. So any kind of deficit will kind of keep lingering on into the future. So if you have a very lean year in the future, and have a deficit spending, it could impact future years. So we don't know what next year's going to bring, but if there was a lean year, it would prevent any kind of future compensation increases.
I think it'd be important for Allison, for you to remind this team and whoever's watching of what happened because of decreased student enrollment this year. How much the budget changed? Was that the question you were going to?
Well, my question was going to be on that too, of like, do we have, I don't remember the forecast.
We were down a little over
1,000.
this year.
Yeah.
I'm actually waiting on the kindergarten numbers to come in.
Joe, can you turn your mic on so the people can
I'm
hear?
actually waiting the kindergarten numbers this morning. They are in pretty close right now, and they are down. So I just don't know how much. So we are projecting another down enrollment next year, but I can't elaborate on that.
Yeah. But I just
Yep.
didn't know if we had the forecast of like, because didn't we do a survey or paid somebody to do a survey and the outlook was?
We did. It's not good, but we
Yeah.
can get those numbers for you from that projection.
Yeah, and again, next year's enrollment won't really affect next year's funding. That'll affect the future year. We would like to see a rebound because, like you said, we are down 1,000 students. But that 1,000 students alone has hit the budget next year $5 million.
Yeah.
So it was a very significant impact for us.
Well, just my thought process is if we are going to kind of stay in that pathway, there's some changes as a whole that's going to happen.
Well, and the other challenge is we actually added teachers this year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but it's also costly.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's early, that you're probably not making these decisions yet, Joe and Mike, but is the hope that a good number of those positions we hired this year with Easter money can be absorbed through retirements and resignations? If we decide to, of course, you have to decide whether you want to keep people in that specific position.
Now, just a clarification on that, are you referring to the additional people that we added through ESSER funds, or are you referring to the teachers that I'm making reference to, or we did from 6 to 5, which was when we budgeted to pay many of those salaries in our classified group out of capital outlay. So we
Right.
made that commitment a couple years ago. That's how, with future budgeting, that's how we were able to add teachers.
Yeah, I'm talking about the ESSER money.
Yeah, we're not there yet. So we are good for next year and the year after to continue being covered for ESSER funds. But that's when those, we've got to be as clever as we can, because I don't know of anybody that doesn't want to retain them. It just comes down to fiscally.
So,
Yeah.
and so this is not, you can say, Linda, let's have that conversation later. But knowing that that's coming in 2 years, are you gonna, how do you make those decisions? Because, there's like, if you have to eliminate positions, are you gonna do input through the community? Are you going to survey staff and administration? And you can just say, we'll talk about that another day.
Or
but
I don't
that
know
would just
yet.
be an interesting conversation looking ahead.
I think we talk about it another day, but just to give some context for whoever's listening in this group, I think Dr. Hubbard reported out that we have 50 ESSER positions that would need to be accounted for in 2 years, right? So I know the board is struggling and starting to have those conversations about what to do with that. No decisions have been made. But to answer your question, I think from my department standpoint, that our hope, if we had to eliminate those positions, that we would do that through attrition. So that would be the hope, of course. No one wants to use the RIF word, so,
Thanks.
yep.
On that number, that is the new FTE. Is that accounting for the teachers that are teaching 6? Is that in that number of the FTE that was in that board presentation?
There was 2 separate numbers, but the 50 does not include the new.
No, I'm
60.
just talking about like, it was like,
It does
was it
include
like
that.
20-something
Yes,
new
that
FTE?
includes the new 5 out of 7, yes.
And was approximately, what, 2
20.
per high school?
I think we added 23.7 new secondary positions this year.
And that's full positions and not like I know West had 2 FTE for 5 to 6. Is that,
I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking.
no, it was the
Are-
equivalent of 2 FTE for teachers teaching 6.
Are you asking, is it teacher teaching 6 considered a 1.0 or a 1.2 position?
Or was that, because it was a point, if I taught all year, it was a 0.2, is that part of that new FTE number?
Part of the 23
Yes,
positions?
I think, yes. That would be included. So like, Jay, if you're 1.2, you would count towards 1.2 towards that number. Yep.
Good job. I don't usually have, like, we get to an end of a presentation, I don't have like 50 other questions, so that's nice.
Nailed it.
I do,
We listened to the concerns expressed last year with the goal being, instead of just being, this is the definite amount of money, or the board's decided that it is spending, X amount, just saying, if we apply the math, this would be taking it down to 10% and just leaving it at that.
so, at some point today, where do you want that benefits discussion? Because I'd be interested to know how the board feels about, hey, we want to make sure we just keep those premiums the same. And there was some talk about projection of what the cost increase could look like next year, so that, I think that's a philosophical conversation to have here, but it looks like from the presentation, the board's, and I don't know if I'm just inferring this, but that the board would like to just keep the premiums the same and not give money, not reduce the premiums.
Yeah, I can speak to that if now's the time. So Jill and Linda, we took a couple different options to the benefits committee. One was lowering the premium cost by 1.6%, which is the projected reduction, and then keeping the district contribution the same. And then the other option was to keep both the same, was to keep the premium costs the same as well as the district contribution. I took back the conversation from the benefits committee to the board. And what I believe we heard from the benefits committee was that they preferred to lower the premium cost and then keep the district contribution the same, thus passing on the savings to the employees. The board is in favor of that. The board would like to pass on those savings to the employees. So again, I think that's something, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I do think that's something that this committee needs to celebrate when we're talking about total package to our employees, is there's going to be a reduction to health cost to all of our employees, if that's the route that we go. I guess what's negotiable is the district contribution. So I guess we could negotiate that, but.
So theoretically, you could lower the district's contribution and free up more money for other compensation components. Right.
And my understanding is that if the employees were to keep the savings each month, that comes out to approximately 1.64%, 1.6%. So that would be an additional 1.6% to all employees by keeping that money $30-ish each month, or whatever that figure is. So don't quote me on that.
We can probably grab that spreadsheet. It differs on which plan you
plan,
take.
that's
So
correct.
the lowest is, I think, $13 a month if you were just on a single coverage. But if you're taking a family coverage, it's a more robust savings. I think it's, I don't remember what it is, but it's more robust.
Well, and that conversation, I totally agree with everything that you just said, that, we don't anticipate a 1.6% savings next year. So if they see their rates go down a little bit, it might cushion a little bit when it goes up.
Correct.
next year.
Yeah.
So it will be such a blow.
And just,
percentages.
well, and I think something we should probably say publicly too is that if we decide to go that route and we lower by 1.6% and there is a big rebound next year of an increase, it's going to feel, it could feel bigger, right? So just so we all recognize.
Well, and it feels like to lower the district contribution, if that were to happen, like you said, in the future, then we are going to see an increase, and then it feels like we're behind the ball
Right.
a little bit.
That's why the board.
That was the
yeah.
board's concern. That was exactly the board's concern, is if we lower the district premium in an effort to free up funds for other compensation components, then you're potentially behind the ball next year, and it feels like you really don't have a lot of money on the other compensation components. John was asking about the spreadsheet for plan costs. Is that something we can put in whatever folder we're sharing?
I made one if we didn't have one.
I think she's talking about the health plan cost.
Oh,
I'll work
I
on
was
that.
talking about the budget planning one.
We do, yeah. Yeah, do you want to grab that, that spread, or that PowerPoint?
Yeah, just specific to the different health plans. Sorry.
I almost wish there was a way to just keep it the same and just take that money, so next year, because like what Russ said, in his 20 years, there hasn't been a decrease, like just, nothing's changed, we're gonna put this over here, and then if it does go up a little bit, we can just.
Does anyone have any more questions for Allison right now? You're around today?
Yep, I'll be here.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
She's
There's
staying. She's staying. We need her for
the
our
salary
presentation, too.
subcommittees
Yeah.
coming up soon. I'll leave that up there for a little bit longer.
That's fine.
I think I need the screen to project.
Oh, never mind.
So do we
So-
want, do we need anything more on health insurance? And then we still have supplemental and salary schedule.
I'm putting
Perfect.
the presentation from our benefits meeting in where? Just like, is there a certain place I should put it? Do we need to make a new folder? Health?
Yeah, we can move stuff over there.
Okay, cool.
You guys ready for the subcommittee presentation? Okay. Okay, so in this room, the salary schedule committee, subcommittee is made up of myself, Lindsay, John, and Jay. We also had Russell, Allison, Christina Lang. Who else am I missing? Anybody else? Yeah. There was. It kind of, there's some people that fell off, but Christina was at our final meeting and was an active member. So when we met the last time, we decided that it would be important for us to share a presentation about our work and how we got there. So team, I'm going to kind of go through this, but please add in whatever you want. So mission vision, we know about that. Staff survey results. So we were asked to survey all of our employees, or excuse me, all of our certified staff, and that was done on February 11th with that leading question. And it was a thought exchange, and so as you guys know, thought exchanges, there's a lot of interaction in there, but that was kind of the guiding question at the beginning. Those are the number of participants, thoughts, and ratings. I'm just going to go through this. If anyone wants to add anything, go ahead. We asked kind of what we call demographic questions, and so how many years in the district? See, our biggest number was 0 to 5. I was kind of surprised by that, personally, that was our biggest group. Yeah, maybe.
Or had more energy left at the end of the
Maybe.
day to fill out the
Maybe,
survey.
How many years in the teaching profession? That was a little bit different, but biggest group was 11 to 15. Again, I'm just going to go through this. What column are you in? So education attainment. And our biggest groups were masters and masters plus 60, and in conferring with Russell and Allison, those are our biggest groups, period. So
Yep.
that makes sense. So some thoughts. We really heard a lot about dead zones, right? So not surprising. We'd love to see no dead zones. Please remove all dead zones. dead zones are impractical because the salary does not keep up with inflation. And just so maybe people who are watching don't know what dead zones are, there are spots in our salary schedule where even if you advance, you get a step, nothing happens to your compensation. You stay the same. Something around the district, and so all employees of the SMSD should receive a step movement, a raise on each step, so no dead zones. Love to see a side note incentive for teachers that have stayed with the district for long-term, maybe even five-year bonus. Dead zones again, longevity and loyalty in the district is important. Invest in your veteran teachers, so no dead zones. Teaching in the SMSD for 25 years, but only on step 18 is unacceptable. So we were also hearing not just about dead zones, but the length vertically of the salary schedule. So we were hearing that people wanted, if they committed to the district for their career, that they would continue to get steps. So that it wasn't long enough. And then we asked, doesn't show up very well, we asked these 3 essential questions at the end. What is the most important priority for you in the SMSD salary schedule? And as a subcommittee, we came up with those prompts. And as not surprising, dead zones was number 1, with more resources dedicated to ensuring that increase. Vertically, number 2, right? And they're pretty close. Asked essentially the same question, what's your second priority? And again, dead zones come up, more resources vertically, and then the same question, what's your third most important priority? So got the same results, basically. So as we met as a subcommittee, we analyzed the survey or the thought exchange and decided to focus in on 4 areas. The focus that we asked Allison to look at was decreasing the number of dead zones in the salary schedule, increasing the number of vertical steps. So again, we have, technically there's 24 on the salary schedule, but the first 3 are bundled, so really there's only 22 steps in our current salary schedule. So we wanted to increase the number of vertical steps. I added this, and the subcommittee at least entertained it, was to provide a raise or salary, we wanted to provide a raise or salary increase to all employees. That was something that we needed to do with all of our proposals. And then I wanted to add money, or we wanted to add money to the starting salary for our new teachers. In looking at our neighbors, we felt that we're kind of falling behind in comparison to starting salary. So those were our 4 guiding areas. So business office draft schedules. So the team asked Allison to draft a few different options for us that met those before mentioned goals or aforementioned goals. And initially she developed 3. She called one of them Allison, which we've since renamed or rebranded. And we threw out 1. And so we ended up landing on 2. And the first one is a hold harmless, and the second one is a varied placement. And so the team took a look at that, analyzed it, and felt like there was enough interest there that we wanted to bring it forward to this bigger team to take a look at. And so I think at this point, we wanted Allison to go through what those 2 different proposals are. How'd I do? Did I miss anything, team? Awesome.
It's wonderful. Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add was about 40% of the certified staff are in one of those dead zone areas where they don't, well, if we have a year where we can give a step, they don't receive any additional compensation. So that was kind of the main thing that was in our mind when we were looking at a new schedule.
Are you on your second screen?
I don't have 2 screens.
You do when you plug in.
Sorry, hold on. All right, hold on. Try this again.
We need that 200-inch.
Yay, nay? Yeah. Better? Okay. It is. You guys can look at it as well if you want to bring it up on your screen. So yes, dead zones were primary on our mind when we were looking at this. So in order to remove the dead zones, initially this hold harmless is the first one I'm going to talk about. I added additional steps within the salary schedule to kind of space out those dead zones, and then provided each decreased the step increase to 1.25% to allow steps increase throughout the whole entire schedule. We did decide that we wanted to keep some areas frozen, like the bachelor's, to promote education, to get that professional growth, to move them through the columns. And that can
I was going to say, it's
be
very
seen.
similar to what we currently have now, in that the bachelor's and the 10 and the 12 stop. And the philosophy that we all agreed with was that it's important to move over. And with the new licensure recertification stuff going through, you pretty much have to take classes now. So it's pretty much, we're going to help push everybody to the master's level. So.
Yeah. So those frozen steps are down there at the bottom. So we did allow for full movement through Master's 30 through a doctorate to receive the full step increase. But the bachelor's through Master's 15 were, like you said, gradually frozen out, maxed out to encourage that professional growth. So we added 30 steps to the schedule to kind of better align with the teacher tenure. Maxing out when you've been here for 22 years doesn't really correlate with what our teachers actually do. So that's where we would get to those frozen areas after only being here for 22 years. We did leave the columns alone. We didn't mess with adding additional columns. That was a little too labor intensive to try to recalculate any of that information. But we did increase the starting wage salary. So on this particular proposal, the bachelor's step 1, it is called step 1 now, not step 3. That was very important for me. It would be $45,125. Which is about a $1,300 increase to what we currently have.
And if you scroll to the right, you can see.
Yeah, so these are some of the factors. So this particular proposal had a $1,346 salary increase to that starting wage. We didn't have any dollar amount to work with when we were playing with these salary schedules, so we tried to keep it within what a step cost would be, which is about that $1.7 million we were talking about earlier. So this proposal itself is within that $1.7 million. The cons to this proposal is that we would have to have a hold harmless. There are, down here below, 543 employees that would have to receive a hold harmless because they, just how the salary schedule worked out, wherever they were placed, their new salary would actually be less than what the new salary placement would be. So in order to do that, this proposal does allow for that hold harmless for the first year, and you can see those dollar amounts over here and where they're located. So your hold harmless could range from, you're not getting a hold harmless to getting a hold harmless of almost $3,000. So that would, be problematic for year 2 going forward. So we do have,
When you say getting a hold harmless, are you, that's like another word for getting a stipend?
yes,
Okay.
basically, we're going to give you a stipend to make sure that you're not making less than what you made before. So we're going to keep you whole,
Got it.
if that makes sense.
And then are you going to explain how that would work for the next year? Maybe? I don't know how.
We don't know.
Okay, gotcha.
That would have to be,
So it's
that would have to be
option one.
discussed. So again, this is a proposal that is within that step increase of $1.7 million. So since there were such a large number of employees that were receiving a hold harmless, there's an option 2, which is called a varied placement. So the hold harmless kept everyone that was on a specific step the same, whatever column you're on. So if you were on step 6, whether you were a bachelor's or a master's, you would all be on the same step 7, or whatever it worked out to be. With this varied placement, the employee would go to the step where they would receive a raise of at least, they would receive a raise that is more than their current step cost. Let me try that again. They would receive a raise that would be more than their current step placement. So if they were on step, they were beginning,
It might be easier to switch to your,
yeah,
I know what you mean, like, if I'm on a salary that's like 68,000, I would move to the one that was closest to that. without
in the
going
same column.
within the same column without receiving a pay decrease. So the pro to this is that it does eliminate the need for a hold harmless, because everyone is going to get at least what they made last year. The problem with this schedule, whether it's a problem or not, is that you're going to have variation across steps. So if you're on step 6, you might have some people that are going to step 5, you might have some people going to step 9. It just depends on what column they're currently in. Have I lost you? A little bit.
Did we have you?
Your step is going to correlate less to your number of years in the district if
Correct.
you're a current employee.
If you're a current employee, so yes.
It's going to be
you would-
kind of random.
It's not going to be necessarily random, it's just going to ensure that you are making as much as you did the year before.
So layman, Spanish teacher, so what you're saying is, I might currently be step 9, but in the new salary schedule, since we renumbered everything, I might be 6, but, no, or I might be 12.
12.
Might be 12, but I'm not making 3-step jump worth of salary.
Correct.
I think it'd be good if, do you want to show that scenario?
Yeah,
Tab?
I just wanted to point out one other thing before we flip over to that. So this does show what your minimum and maximum increase would be. On this proposal, it'd be $13 minimum to a maximum of $2,100. It is more than what a step increase is, because of course we're providing a raise for everybody. So it was a $2.5 million increase. So I'm going to flip over to that scenario. I do have one other.
But before you do that, I want to, since you just pointed that out, look at year 2. It's actually a savings.
Oh, sorry. That's year 2.
So it is initially, but it does free up more money going forward.
Yes, thank you. Great point. So,
Allison, before you go, is it easier to say that very often employees associate the steps with their number of years of service, and that will no longer be the case? So you may be on step 9 and in your 9th year of teaching, but if you move to step 12, that does not indicate your years of service. So is that fair to say? I'm just trying to.
It's going to be different for every person.
It's gonna be
Maybe you
different.
were here during a frozen year, and so maybe it suddenly aligns with how many years you've
It's
been in the
exactly right.
district.
And we
We're
have
just-
been through frozen years and so, but I just think it's
Yeah.
easier to understand because
Yeah.
people often associate the
It will
steps
be
with
for the
years
new
of
people
service.
coming in. They'll have a really organized schedule, but
correct.
for our veterans, it may or may not.
And I just actually looked at the current salary schedule, just to get some examples, and I was like, okay, somebody on step 6 in the master's column, and on the current schedule, would actually go to step 5 on this varied schedule.
She has a real nice
Yeah,
interactive.
perfect. Yeah, so like, you might actually go to a lower step, but it's actually more money.
So
Does that make sense?
I think this is just going to have to be an education component.
Oh, yeah.
When we ratify and when contracts come out. And I also think we need a concerted effort from the association and principals to say, save your gosh darn contract. It's amazing how many people don't know. And like for me, by the time I left, my total years of service was way beyond what my step was. And then for a lot of people, at some point, you're always going to fall off that salary schedule anyways. So I think it's good to say, you need to mark that 2000, whatever the school year is, this is what your step was with this new change. And then print that contract and keep it.
And I think for most of us that have been here for a while, it's not correlated. And so it's easier to be like, yeah, okay.
So you guys were talking about the scenario I have available. So this allows for us to look at a specific scenario. So if this so a specific employee, unknown, is on Masters 15, Step 15. This shows that they are currently making $68,326. With a step increase, note that it's going from 15 to 16. They still will make $68,326 because they're in a dead zone. On the hold harmless schedule, it would bump up to $872 for a total of $69,198. On the varied placement schedule, I guess I should note that you can see up here where their new step is. So step 15 would stay on step 16 with the current schedule. On the hold harmless, it would go to 21. On the varied placement, they would go to 20. So they would still make more than they were making before. So $68,326 to $68,344 for a raise of $18, which is more than they would have with a step increase. So let me give you an example of, let's just go.
This is very cool.
I also think it's a nice timing wise because, with the talk of the $700 ESSER, it does help a little bit. And understanding that because this salary schedule costs less each year for step, theoretically, there's going to be more money available to increase all salaries every year.
That's all.
And with that majority of the dead zones being removed, that frees up that pressure as well. If everybody's going to see something, it may not be a huge something, but it will, nobody's going to be sitting there making nothing.
It's definitely an ouch, initial, but I think it's one of those things that we've got to rip the Band-Aid off and get to a salary schedule that is more controllable. I don't know.
I would agree, and I would also add to that, it's not only the addition of the ESSER funds, but the addition of the insurance money. I mean, how many times can we say that to get a supplemental stipend plus an insurance? Because a lot of times, there have been many years in the past where we have gotten a raise, and it might be minimal, but it's a raise, but that insurance cost kicks up, and you're like, by the time it's all said and done, it's frustrating. So the timeliness of this is looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So this can be played with if you want to look at specific employees. I don't know what happens if everybody's playing in it at the same time because it is a shared sheet. So just be aware of that. So again, here's an example of someone. This is the cell that we have the most people currently on Master 60, Step 24. They would go to Master 60, Step 30, but would receive that $930 raise on the varied placement or hold harmless.
And this is without a 1%.
Without
increase?
the 1%. So
Okay.
I haven't presented this to the subcommittee, so I apologize. I do have another proposal that Since we do have a pot of money to work with, that might be another option if you would like to look at that now.
Is that the varied placement too?
That is the varied placement too. Yes.
Can we make a note here too? I believe this is accurate, that in this scenario where most of our employees are at, they might be looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, I go from master's 60, step 40 to 30. Well, I still have one more step to go to, right?
That's what the varied placement too, but thank you for the segue.
Okay, good.
So I did provide a varied placement scenario 2 that is the exact same. I didn't tweak any of the percentages or anything. The only thing I did add was I bumped up the starting salary to $1,687, and I said everybody should receive a $400 raise above what their current step would have provided them. So, apologies for not sharing that sooner, but this proposal would have a first-year cost of $3.1 million, which is within that what our bucket was of, I don't have it in front of me now, it's around 3.1. 3.1, 3.2. So that still stays within that bucket of money that's available. So I also have that out here hidden, sorry. Not trying to be tricky or anything, for
less
what
confusing.
what that dollar amount increase would be. So again, Master 60, Step 24, as Dr. Schumacher mentioned before, this would actually put them on Step 29. So they would be eligible for another step in the future to Step 30, and would provide a $1,500 raise for this coming year.
So I just wanted to clarify again. So this person, they're currently making 85, I can't read that, 84,865. If we did just a step increase, thank you, they wouldn't get anything. If they did hold harmless, 930, varied placement 930, and then the second version, 1579. With another step for next year.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's correct.
And can you share with me, in varied placement 2, what the base salary would be?
Yep.
What would be the entry level salary?
The entry level would be $45,466.
Is that roughly 2,000 more than what it is now?
1,600.
And just to give some context, guys, the Johnson County HR folks were emailing this morning asking about starting salaries for next year. Blue Valley's saying 46. Gardner is saying 44.1, but still negotiating. 46 in Spring Hill. 43,286 in Olathe. And 43.5.
And Piper and Turner, who are the top salaries right now, are getting very close to 47.
Right.
Pre-negotiations.
Right.
When you say top salary, starting teachers is?
Starting teachers.
Okay, that's okay.
I think it always is good to say, though, too, that our salary schedule flourishes, whereas some of these districts, they don't have the robust salary schedule we have for those not only serving longer years of service, but also moving over columns.
100%. Okay.
And my thought too on this was it's better in the long run. Yes, it's not necessarily the best scenario for some of our at the end, but we can always talk about like some of the longevity stuff outside of this, of like how do we support and those other teachers that have been here longer, and just like I think this is a good footing to get us into a spot where it just makes it easier every year going forward, where we're not, you know, how often in the past how we always locked heads and just because the people at the end are just, or dead zones, don't see anything without a raise. And this really adds a lot more freedom in that, and typically will cost less. So it will allow us to then pick up a little bit more.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. So The second year cost is a little bit more pricey than that first varied placement that we saw, but that was mostly because we did allow for that second step for those that are currently maxed out in what would be 24, 25, I guess. No, yeah. But future years, it would be less costly, and anything would hopefully be added onto the base to allow it to flow through for all employees.
I really like this, and for me, a non-math guy, this makes a lot of sense. I do have a question, a scenario where a current teacher is maybe at step 9, and in the scenario with the varied placement, they would be put at a step 7 or 8. Making more money, but they would go down a step. And the issue I have is that if you have a teacher coming in from Blue Valley who is at step 9 or 9th year, essentially, and we bring them in as a step 9, but I'm teaching 9 years, but I'm only at step 7.
That's a good question.
I would foresee that we would have some sort of placement schedule for new hires, for where to place them.
And I would recommend that, I feel confident that Human Resources would focus more on what their salary was instead of the steps. It wouldn't be as much steps. It might be, I think they would probably be okay coming in at a lesser step if they were making more money. Not only that piece, but you get additional steps throughout your career. So if people are going back in steps and making more money, not only are we eliminating the dead zones, but they have more opportunities throughout their career to make money. So with the addition of steps.
Yeah, my fear is that we're going to bring in somebody new
Right.
making more money that somebody, if I've been here 9 years
Yeah.
and somebody else comes in at step 9 and is making more money than I am, and I've been here. That's my concern.
That already happens, because like, for a teacher who, in the district, and I got frozen like 3 times or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they brought in people and they gave them all their years. They were making a lot more than I was as a teacher because they were granted I think it's a thing that already happened, just because of the nature related to some of the granting of years
And
and
it
things
just
like
depends
that.
also on what they're teaching too, because,
I think too, we need to value new employees' experience. They weren't here, but they have dedicated themselves to the profession for that time. And, you can't, if we sat here all day and tried to make everything fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is a wonderful plan. I just am trying to figure out the solutions.
What if
Dr.
you didn't
Schumacher,
use
can
numbers?
you share
What if you-
how
sorry.
HR deals with, because our schedule doesn't match with anybody's schedule, right? I think we all learn that when we're trying to compare during our impasse proceedings, is that it's impossible. And there's really funky stuff in some district schedules. So how do you deal with that, since not everybody uses the same format?
We reference the P&A, of course, and it says that we can bring in 9 years of experience and then start someone off on
that's
step
where
10.
that number comes from.
And
Okay.
so we use their years of experience. We ask them for a verification sheet. Dr. Dane does bring up a really good point. I think we need to think as an HR team on what that's going to look like as we offer contracts, at least in this first year, considering what happens to our existing employees in this first placement. I hadn't thought of that, but I think that's something that we can work through to make sure that we're providing equitable treatment for our current staff, as well as trying to recruit in and bring in new staff.
Is that related to being started on step 4, or that bundle? Is that why current employees who have been here are a further step along than their actual year's service, is because of that?
sometimes.
Yes, sometimes.
What keeps us having to use numbers for steps as opposed to letters? I'm being
Algebra.
serious, because if you use
looking for,
letters, then it
X.
doesn't correlate to the number of years you've been teaching.
A plus 1 doesn't equal anything.
That's true.
And there's only 26 letters, so.
Use Greek alphabet.
Maybe
Oh,
swim team, like the starfish, the
I'm a
guppies.
double A.
The Spanish alphabet has 30.
There you go.
I believe there's language in the P&A that states that it doesn't equate necessarily to number
It-
of years of service.
correct.
So,
And I like your idea of like, if you look, well, I think Joe said it, look at their previous
Yeah,
salary.
because
their
no,
previous
but
contract.
there are districts that do like our current salary schedule is where there's a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 5. I think when we move with this, education is going to be the key. And I think not only to the bargaining unit, but so that bargaining unit and HR and administration are all able to explain somewhat that
And I
salary
think,
schedule.
you know, honest in the HR standpoint, if you got somebody coming in with something that you can't hire anywhere else, you're going to do whatever you can to get them what they want.
yeah, that's right. There is that provision in the P&A too that says a hard-to-fill placement that we can go beyond the 9.
Yeah.
And so we do that occasionally.
I was thinking too that just as we throw out there things that are different, we hire teachers every year that have more years of experience than they're placed on the salary schedule. So, you know, that it's just a starting point. That's why it's just the most critical piece is that each individual employee knows when we make this change what your starting point was.
Well, and that's, we had talked about the scenario sheet of having that get put into a web and access on the staff page and not be a sheet. So like, you know, everybody can be on it at once, kind of messing around and having that be a link from us and the district of like, if this is like approved, you can use this to see where you would be on, and it wouldn't have the different columns. It would have whatever one, if we picked one, you know. So if it was varied two, it would just say old placement, new placement, this is what you're gonna get, and just make it real easy.
I feel like that will be really important during ratification of.
Yeah.
We can have that linked and people can go through and start doing that as they're going through.
Well, and capturing that thought exchange
That number
where
more.
40% of the people surveyed said that dead zones are critical to be gone, and that's what the salary schedule does. So even though this year you might not have that immediate impact, anybody who stays in the district long enough is going to benefit from that.
I have a question, and this might be like a obvious thing, so I apologize for not being as savvy with this. If I am at that bachelor's level, would I still, even though I'm not getting my, like, an increase, my step would still go down? So in the event then that I, like, go get my master's, then I would just go over with whatever step?
We,
Okay.
there's some, I don't want to call it oddities, but there's only a few bachelors that go past kind of the normal stopping point now. So like the amount of people is like really less than 5 on that kind of, and
But everybody would, they're just like everybody else, like even a person who's at a doctorate level maxes out
correct.
where we are. So, but yeah, you continue making those steps. So if you're a bachelor 15 and then you, or your bachelor, and then all of a sudden you move all the way over to master's, you're going to be the next year master's 16.
Yeah.
So,
And it's pretty hard now to relicensure and not, because you have, as a new teacher, you have to have so many college credits just to relicense now.
And that's, our team really tried to take that into consideration of if we're having to relicense after 5 years, you're going to need some credits. And then, 10 years later, what do you need? So that's kind of where we decided where those dead zones would start.
Related to like speech path and nursing and all those people. I was just curious.
They're so,
Not worth asking.
yeah, they're different. She was just asking on like the speech path or the nurses and
Social
stuff.
workers, they're not on the same
They're on a
licensure.
different licensure pathway, and so,
I was just curious if that sentiment was true across all of those, nurses and all of the other staff we have that aren't on.
Their licensures are different, but we still honor them the same way in the P&A. So,
I think it's good to point out too, that as going forward, I know we're gonna do teams here pretty soon. The YOLOs on her stuff is the safe
Yeah.
to play with.
So I did go ahead and copy some of these if for some reason you do want to play with it. Honestly, I think that varied placement 2 is the best option for the majority of employees. But if for some reason you do want to play with it, I have created some copies out there. All those yellow fields like he was talking about, those are the ones that can be edited. Everything else has been locked.
Well, and if your group opens this and wants to, you'll have to duplicate to unlock it because of the lock settings. That's the only way or did you change it?
Yeah, I changed these,
Okay,
but that's fine too.
yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more? On that spreadsheet, it says first year difference, second year step difference. It's got a green and a red box. A little bit farther to the right. Nope. Left.
Left?
Go now down.
Get a lot.
Oh, not that far. Right there. Those two
Need to get rid of the whole top of the window.
right there. Those.
Okay, yes, so this is, referencing a wrong number. The first year step difference, this is just the difference. I went ahead and entered the dollar amount that was presented at the first part with our bucket of money, and I took out the amount for supplementals, since of course this doesn't affect any of the supplementals. I don't know what you guys want to do, so I just made some assumptions, and of course some of those might be wrong. So that $913 is just a comparison to what it would be to move to this salary schedule compared to that pot of money. Looking at it now, that second year cost difference is wrong because it no longer references the step cost, but that would be, it would be about $150,000 savings for year 2 of how much we have saved by just with the restructure, with providing a step increase.
So that blue box right there is the one that we should be looking at if we're looking at this schedule.
Yeah, I'll fix that when we get done here.
So then, just for my clarity, do we feel like individual teams are going to go through, decide which of the 3 options, and then build their budget based on that? Or as a team, we're going to decide like, hey, this is the one we think is the most feasible, and build our potential budget proposals based on one salary schedule proposal?
Can I get a clarification from Allison on this one too? Can you go down, please, to that green, yeah. Yep, that one. So this is varied placement 2. So I just want to make sure we all understand. So you're saying that this accounts for the $160,000 addition to supplementals?
Yes, I took the bucket of money, which is that $3.28 million, and subtracted out the $161,000 that was costed out for supplementals.
Okay, and that still allows for horizontal movement?
Yep, still has the
$800,000.
$800,000 for the professional growth.
And this version leaves us with $913 of.
$913 to spare.
Okay.
Don't spend it all in one
Basically
place.
a cost neutral. And then that second number is inadequate because it's referencing something wrong.
Yeah,
So that will be fixed.
I'll fix that part.
Yep.
So this would be the column movement, the savings of health savings, $700, everyone gets a raise, and we have $900 left. And then supplementals.
Correct.
Got it.
Just before we wrap up, down below a little further, I do have a comparison, just kind of a more of a visual comparison for those of you that have that spreadsheet open, of what it is to what they're currently making. So the placement on the new varied 2 schedule compared to what they're currently making. So you can see where the dollar changes are there. And then further down is a comparison to what they are currently making, plus if they would have gotten a step on the current schedule to this new schedule, if that makes sense.
So the first section doesn't have a step.
The first section doesn't have a step, the second section does.
There you go.
So, just for your reference. I like color coding.
One, yeah, on that green thing you were just showing us, someone might say like, oh, look, this person's going to get a $2,000 increase, or is it the second one we should be looking at?
Well, the second has the step included, so.
Yeah, the second one has the step, the first one does not. So it depends on how you want to look at it.
Version would include the step, right?
Right, so, yeah.
If it's less confusing, we could remove the first one if we thought about it. I'm just spitting that out.
Yeah, I'm confused now, and I thought
I guess it depends on if you're wanting to look at it from employee stance of how much more am I going to make next year versus this is how I'm comparing it to what the current schedule is plus a step. So I guess it's a personal versus holistic view.
Okay.
I can remove them if you would like.
No, I
That's
think
fine.
it's just good to understand them.
I think it's good to understand what an individual employee is going to make in difference. Right?
I'm just thinking that prior to ratification, it would be really beneficial to have a couple sessions where we would walk through this with people.
I think the webs,
Well, that would
we
be,
do
I mean, I'd be happy if anybody from the district wanted to join. We generally do show up to answer questions so people hear firsthand kind of what is, but it will not be me trying to explain it. I'm thinking anybody on the NEA team but me.
I think, yes, and I think it would be good to produce, like we've done in the past, a
A
little
video.
video and have the web thing that would show where you were, where you would be, and make it simple of like, what is your increased height?
Yeah, because ultimately, people just want to know they're making more, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think the important thing for a lot of our staff is going to be like, wow, this takes like, it's costing less, so theoretically I should be almost, I'm not saying anything other, like guaranteed a step, but now I don't have to worry so much about percentage to the base because I can see for the next so many years that if I'm here and then as long as I get a step next year, this is where I'll be. And then after that, I'll be here and here and here.
Yeah, and I would say, I think the first thing they're going to look at was what was mentioned. The first thing they're going to look at, am I making more money? The second thing they're going to look at, wait a second, they're adding more steps. So if I stay in this district, I'm going to continue to get raises. And the third thing they're going to look at is what came back from the thought exchange, which is the biggest concern we had is there are no more dead zones. So I think those three items right there alone are what are going to attract the attention.
until you get to year 31.
Well, so
You got other
there's
thoughts
no
there, too.
dead zones, but there's still like a cap for each column. Well, from masters plus 15 lower. Do you know what I mean? Like,
But yeah, and that's always been there, and that's the philosophy, I think, of,
There should be less, though.
there's less.
Yeah.
Like for masters plus 15, and she has it down at the bottom.
It goes
Once
down
you get to step 29,
24,
it's, yeah.
Well, and we talked about that, like, it is the philosophy of the district. Our salary schedule speaks to what we value, and this speaks to we value our teachers getting more education. And so, by placing that cap, it does, in a way, force people to move over and get more education. Force them if they want to make more money. That's the way I see it, but yes.
Cohorse.
Force, yes, that would be a good one.
so I think, we didn't answer Lindsay's question, but I think that's a good point. Okay.
Yes.
Well, the big thing is that we actually have a decrease of 1.6%. And so the board, and I think this was the feeling from the Benefits Committee, was that rather than reduce the amount that the district is going to pay to that, we're just going to pass that savings on to the people that take the insurance. So actually, everyone's bottom line health insurance cost, if they take it, will go down.
That's in that email, and I think it would just be figured in probably on the back.
Yeah, and it's hard because you can't put a specific, it's not a huge amount of money. It's really thinking ahead to potential increases next year to soften that blow.
And I think it's one of those things that from the district side, it makes more of an impact as a whole into the, the package.
Did all insurance plans go down, like the VSP and the Delta, or is it just the Blue Cross?
It's just the healthcare, correct, Mike? Yeah.
That is correct, but the other ones remained
Yeah, they were
neutral,
cost
so,
neutral.
yeah.
Yep. All right, let's hit the supplemental.
Woohoo.
Just moving right along.
Okay,
Or do you need a bathroom break first?
kind of. I mean, I've been holding it all, as a teacher, that's what we trained to do, so. group discussing the supplemental pay schedule. And I know John and myself and Todd Dane, Michael Schumacher, and a whole bunch of others, John McKinney, Kent Glazer, Savannah from Trail Ridge, I'm trying to remember her last name, sorry, Alyssa Passmore, and Jenny Collier, is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we looked at a few things, for instance, volleyball, now, I don't know how many years ago it started, but it started to have more weekend-based tournaments. And so the, commitment and the amount of time with students and athletes has grown. So we are proposing to move volleyball from Group 3 at $4,806 to Group 2, which would be $5,504. And just as a side note, we did make note that it would be very good to have a year-long, maybe a year-long subcommittee that looks at just kind of restructuring the supplemental pay schedule. Like, as you can see up here, we technically have 5 groups where there's some other districts that have up to 15 or 20 different groups, and that it kind of includes like every possible thing you could, be doing outside of the contract. Okay. Moving down, we have I don't know how many years it's been, maybe 2, the Unified Bowling coach. It's just 1 year, and they didn't have a place, so we're adding a place, and I kind of let Kent Glazer kind of direct us on that, and so he said the best place would be as an assistant bowling coach would be paid. For the Unified Bowling head coach. We're up to 6 stars, I think, so or asterisks for, our side notes over there. And so I have that down below. We'll look at that in a minute.
What do the asterisks mean?
That there's a side note over here. So it's just saying that the Unified Bowling head coach will receive the assistant bowling coach stipend. I mean, I thought that would be
Change.
explanatory.
Symbols too.
What?
You could just change symbols.
That's
too.
true. That's right. That would be better. I'll let maybe Allison or Rachel, if they want to mess with the way it looks. I can help too, but I thought it might have been explanatory just being in here that it would be, 60% of the group where bowling is. But we decided just to make a note.
Well, I'm sorry, the
ahead.
side thing on that could just be bracket that one and just do assistant bowling
Sure.
instead of that, and then you don't have to reference anything.
Right. Yeah, okay. So then, as we go down, in the middle school supplemental pay positions, John McKinney spoke to the need to have a middle school counseling department coordinator. They had someone that was doing those responsibilities and being paid, but not, I think, the amount that he thought it should be. And so we equated it to the amount that a division coordinator would get at the high school, someone that has a department that has less than 10 teachers in it. And so that's how we came up with the number 3,130. We changed the name of the intramural coordinator to the athletic coordinator because that's what they're called now. And we can discuss this. We had it drop down from 4,500 to 3,300 because of the fact that a lot of them are teachers and they get a second plan when they are athletic coordinators, so they get one plan just as being a teacher, a supervision, and then another plan. But it's open for discussion. I don't know a lot about athletic coordinator. It's the athletic director is an admin at the middle school level, and then the athletic coordinator is typically, I think, a teacher. Go ahead.
Clarification though, at the high school level, the athletic director, isn't it a teacher contract?
No.
Because they don't qualify on, because I run into this just with resale licensure because the state doesn't consider it like admin, so my guy can't do the 5-year professional. He's just constantly doing the 2-year.
Yeah, the plan is to have those officially become assistant principal positions, but because we can't yet.
Okay.
So they are on an administrative contract, though.
Okay.
But they're not coded as an administrator, as an associate principal at the state level.
Okay.
Okay. And so then this is where we were having a long discussion, Bill, not with Bill, but I want to bring Bill in. A long discussion about orchestra, choral, and band directors at the middle school level, and how their compensation was $755, and comparing it to the high school, which would be Group 2, which is $5,500. And so we were looking at an increase in that. We were trying to discuss a good placement. The last suggestion we ended up with was 60% of Group 3. So like an assistant of Group 3, which would be $2,884.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The choir,
Yes.
is that covered in the different section of our P&A?
This is that would be elementary choir. This is
this is
middle
just
school.
middle school.
Yep, just
All
middle
right.
school right here.
Keep going.
We don't want to forget about middle school, our middle child.
Yes.
Do you have a question?
I'm going to ask you, for the choral position, is there a middle school supplemental for the musical? Or is that part of the choir job for the middle school job?
Good question. So this line right here, orchestra, choral, and band, is just for like all the concerts, right? The after-school stuff. If you were a musical director, you would be part of the sponsoring, which would be $1,600. So I didn't know if you had thoughts on, what it entails to be orchestra, choral, or band director, how many performances they have, and that kind of thing.
First, I heard the suggestion, so I'm not.
I don't think
No
you're
problem.
on, Bill.
Yeah.
I can tell you from experience that the orchestra directors, choir, band directors, they will.
There you go. Sorry, thank you. I can tell you from experience that the orchestra, choir, and band directors will do at least one performance per quarter. Typically, then there's the area festivals plugged in, so that takes it to 5. Oftentimes, they're going to do, under the choir folks will go to the nursing homes, they'll go to Crown Center. There's other events that they plug into. So again, I don't have a concrete number that I can give you, but I do know there's several of those, plus the Middle School Solo and Ensemble Festival in the spring. That's a Saturday commitment, and then the after hours to get all those groups ready. Mm-hmm. And so I have heard for a while that they felt like that the stipend wasn't enough that really reflected what they did.
Okay.
But again, I've not done any kind of
Sure.
formal research to tell you, here's what they are doing.
Okay, great, thank you. So there's that position. So as far as the musical, it would be a sponsoring position, which is still significantly less than if you were the musical director. Where's that up here, like here? Group 3. But again, we would like to get a group together, subcommittee, that takes a lot longer time to look over this and restructure it. Kent Glazier showed us, I think Olathe and Blue Valley, and the way that they had theirs, they have like I said, 15 to 20 different groups. So there's just more places to put people. One thing to note, the 3 stars here for orchestra, choral, and band director, if the same person is both band and orchestra leader in a school, only one stipend is paid, and it's a different number than just a single. And I think Allison and I both don't know exactly why, but it looks like it's about 15% more than just what one single stipend would be. So that's why it would be $33.17 if they were both band and orchestra director at a middle school. I don't know if we have that.
No, we do not.
Okay. Do you think that's ever possible?
I think the conversation was for band and orchestra was that they were either a combination of the band orchestra with high school
Oh.
or with the elementary school.
Gotcha.
Whereas, for the most part, our choral directors are not.
Right. Yeah, like there's orchestra teachers that are split between, and band that are split between levels. The next one, positions for head coaching at the middle school level. We've been doing athletics at the middle school level for, how many years? 5? 5 years. And so we would like their compensation increased. We have it at 60%, or not, well, what they were before is they were right in here, where positions for sponsoring, supervising, chaperoning. So it was 1,600 about. Their season and their commitment is comparable to an assistant or maybe a freshman coach for a freshman team. And so we took that in consideration, and we're doing 60% of group 2, which would be like an assistant in that group, which would be 3,302. And then the assistant coaching positions for middle school would be, they were 75%, but then because we were increasing it, we took it to 60% of the middle school head coach, which is mirroring how the assistants are for high school. High school assistants are 60% of head coaches. This over here, it used to say if the same person's assigned to journalism and video production, only one stipend of this amount is paid. Every year you'll have to change that. Like every year, anytime that we increase, a percent to the base, we also do that to the supplemental. So instead of having to increase a number every year, we just put in group 3 because that's what it is. Is that right? Hold on, the numbers. Oh, I see why. So here's why. Last year, for the 21-22 school year, group 3 went up to 4806. But I found a little mistake that on our printed schedule, this still said 4737 instead of 4806. So then I'm thinking, okay, every year we're having to change those numbers in multiple places. Why not just reference the group that it's attached to?
Less likely for mistakes.
Right. Okay, I'll keep going. We just thought it might make sense to move choir out of the elementary supplemental pay positions and put it down here because we found after having Laura Holland as part of the group 2, after she asked many other elementary schools what their supplemental pay positions were, pretty much every one of them had 2. They were allowed 2, and it would be student council and safety patrol or math club, but they also have this mathletics as well. So I don't know, this is just in there because we had lots of teachers asking, why doesn't my building have all of these clubs? I would like to do one of these clubs. And so we kind of found that it seemed as though most elementaries were allowed to have 2 supplemental pay positions per building. So I mean, this can be changed. This was just something that we found. Is that? Go ahead. That wasn't even in there at all. We were wanting to make it more clear to elementary school teachers that these are possible ones, but it doesn't mean that every single one of them will be filled.
But that verbiage is representative of our practice.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
It is, okay. And so then it just says any additional supplemental pay positions will be funded by the building budget. So if they wanted to, have one of these.
It doesn't, it just allows people to see that choir isn't in that and the building's not, whereas the district is currently paying that. Yeah,
Does anybody know, probably not offhand, but have we been able to fit choir within the school day in most elementary schools, so it's no longer, we used
We
to
do
pay them
not.
hourly if it couldn't be done. Bill, do you know that?
From my understanding, again, I have not polled anybody, but as best I can explain is the schools that have choir nowadays are after school or before school because the buildings are so full that their daytime is not conducive to actually having the elementary choirs in school. And if it was, then it wouldn't be paid by a supplemental at that point, be handled differently. So the supplemental, is my understanding, has been for those that are meeting either before or after school. And that's 95% of our buildings.
So by moving choir to a district-wide supplemental, that actually gives elementary school principals the opportunity to have two supplementals that are not choir.
And we had talked about that at our last meeting, that a few years ago, we switched it because of that situation, that elementaries, some were in the middle of the day, some were before or after school, but they weren't getting paid for it.
Yeah, and they got, we've had some compensation.
So I think it
of course.
was our first year of IBB that we switched it to choir was not part of that list.
Okay.
To give everybody the opportunity to do that.
As a district one, did they look at making it the 1660 like the other district ones for like athletic coach and things are? It's just the only one on that district level that's not. So I just didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, that can be a proposal.
What,
Do we know?
That we could consider, like our groups could consider that.
Yeah, she's saying,
Yeah.
increase the choir to be 1660 like the other ones,
Yeah.
on the district-wide. Abby, currently, do you have like 2 of these positions plus choir? Okay, okay, good. I just want to make sure that was the case, because that's why we were looking at it that way.
Can you just explain to me one more time what you do with volleyball at the very top?
Yes, volleyball was in group 2, so they were making 4806. We moved, oh, so sorry, thank you. Volleyball was in group 3, and we moved them to group 2. So it'd be an increase of about $600 for the head coach. For the assistant, that also would be an increase because they're now 60% in group 2. And Allison sent me a nice table of the cost of each of these things.
What was the total cost,
161,000.
which is what she allocated for under
Correct.
the assumption?
Yeah, that's why
when
she was saying,
presented her-
she's like,
Gotcha.
giving the punchline of the supplemental pay schedule. Yeah, but anyway.
Are there other questions?
I have one more, I'm sorry. That $161,000 came out of that $3.2 million bucket, is that?
Yes, that's correct. And that's why on her new, I don't know if it's new, but on her spreadsheet, she changed it to like 3.1 million.
Correct. Okay.
Because they took out the 160,000.
And what, I'm assuming that most of that, a good chunk of that is from the new middle school coordinator
It's,
position,
it's the middle school athletics.
and the athletics went up. Okay. Got it.
Yes, coordinator is one position.
Per school.
And also the
Or just one
orchestra.
as a whole? Oh,
One for each building.
No, it's one person for all 5 middle schools. Yes.
yes. No, yeah, that's where I was like,
Also, though, the orchestra, choral, and band directors at the middle school, that was a significant increase because there's 3 at each school.
okay.
So that's 15 of them.
No, that's good.
But I think that matches like survey results we've gotten, is that that's where we hear the most about supplemental, is at that middle school level, and that's the gap we've had.
Well,
I
so,
think,
go ahead, Mike.
I think we just want to tap into Bill again as much as we can, just to make sure that we want to stay commensurate. I mean, I think all of us want to pay our sponsors and our teachers as much as we possibly can. But is this going, like for the orchestra, choral, and band director, does that increase throw out of whack, technical term, what the high school directors are getting? Or are we going to get pushback from our high school directors and say, well, hold on, I'm doing
Right.
far and above more work?
Again, I haven't talked to anybody. This is Bill Thomas's opinion at this point. I would think that most of the directors have looked at the middle school stipends, and I've heard from a couple of them over the years I've been doing this already, that the middle school folks, they felt like have been shortchanged a little bit. I don't think the high school directors are concerned about themselves at the moment. I think they're wanting to make sure they keep good people in the pipeline as part of their team.
I think it's a different animal in
Yes.
general too, because a lot of people may not know that at the middle school level, there aren't cuts. So like,
Anyone can
Well,
do it, right?
and at the middle school level, they are the foundation, the building for what your high school program's going to be, which is a big part. And they do have pretty equitable number of concerts. So, and I think, like a lot of places, I think there's a real vertical team between middle and high, your northwest area, your west area, music feeders very much coordinate and work together.
Correct. And a lot of times, those middle school folks will come and assist and help out and be present at the high school events. And the same is reciprocal. I mean, the high school guys go down too and help out. But again, my gut feeling is that the high school folks would appreciate the help to help keep those good people in their pattern, in their feeders.
I think these numbers also, more closely align with some of the other districts in Johnson County as far as the middle school compensation for those positions. The other thing that I think is important to note that our middle school music programs still compete and register with KMEA, and a lot of times those are on weekends and Saturdays and sometimes out of town. So I think it's important to navigate that, and if we want to be relevant at the state level with middle schools and KMEA, I think it's an important part.
Well, and just the supervision piece of middle school versus high school. Middle schoolers, you have to wait for someone to come pick them up afterwards, where high school, a lot of them are going to get in a car with someone, their friends, or they drive, and they're going to leave. I think the middle school coaches and all of those type of supervision pieces, they're sitting around waiting for people to pick up.
Other questions? Jill, was there anything else you wanted to share on it? I do want to remind folks that in certain years, and I think your first IBB year, when you had supplemental proposals that didn't come out of a joint committee, maybe came from one side or the other, or both, but different proposals. What we did, I don't plan on doing this year unless people feel a need. If you remember, we put each one up on a flip chart, and didn't you take stickies and you rated 1, 2s, and 3s? Which supplemental increase was a 1, meaning you really got to do it this year? Did you feel that way? Which one was a 2, meaning it would really be nice to raise choir, but it's not a must-have this year? Or was it a 3, that there wasn't agreement that it was needed? You all maybe did that one time a couple of years ago, but I don't have a feeling you need to do that on this. And the reason I'm saying that is that dollar amount has already been calculated into the number you're working with. If you were so tight, and if any one of your teams do feel like you want to pull from that dollar amount to get the amount you want overall to work with higher, then I would want you to do that process.
I think also that at that time, those dollar amounts that we were messing with were a lot larger.
Yeah.
And
the budget was a lot.
In the pool of things, this is.
Okay. So is
Real
everyone
small.
okay just sort of taking this as a whole? No team is going to pick and choose what you fund, what you don't. You take it as a whole. Okay. Good? Okay. All right. So Lindsay's going to share a document. But Lindsay, let me say a few things before you open it on your screen, before people start reading. So, because we do have to talk about this idea of what all does each team decide. And I'm going to go over your assignment as team members. But first, I want to say the reason that I break you all into 3 different teams to work on economics is because, they say that groups over 7 or 8, there are going to be people that naturally pull back. In other words, only 7 or 8 people are really going to lean in any large group, right? So if we stay large when we do your hardest work, you lose some people. They step back, right, and make room for 7 or 8, right? You're a group of 10. So I also put you in smaller groups because smaller groups are going to focus on different things. When you come back together, you're going to hear each group's presentation. You're going, oh, we didn't think of that, because your group was focused on a different track. So, right, it's richer and more efficient. You get more thought process when you're doing it at the same time, but in 3 separate rooms. And then also potential disagreements that can get worked out amongst your group without facilitation and without the weight of 10 different opinions is a good thing for y'all, relationship-wise and process-wise. Come back with maybe 3 different opinions, 3 different groups, but not 10 different opinions, right? And then also, it avoids the us versus them. I don't feel like you guys ever fall into association camp, district camp. You guys are pretty much past that. But when things are hard on hard economic years and you do everything all in one group, economics all in one fell swoop, it does create the potential for people to start falling into the camp that they see their leader from their organization fall into, right? So this kind of, avoids that. So those are sort of the reasons that, in perspectives get further, right? When you have time to you're only competing with 3 people in your group to get your perspective out, you're gonna go deeper with it, right? So it's just richer work. So that's why I put you into 3 groups. With that said, we do need to talk about whether or not each group needs to determine which salary proposal, if you will, do you all as groups want to consider those 3 options, or do you as one group want to see if there is a consensus here towards one of the options so that you're all working from that same assumption when you're in your groups? Does that question make sense? It was something Lindsay asked earlier.
Yeah, does the salary schedule committee have one that they feel like is strongest and why?
And who here was on that committee? Okay, and then did you have a question following up?
I just want a clarification, and Rachel just clarified it.
Okay.
I don't think we ever got to a point where we came to a consensus as a team. I bet we all have individual opinions, but.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say too. I don't feel like I'm on. Okay, cool. I agree. I mean, because we talked about it too. We're like, I think it's best to take these 2 at the time too. Now there's 3, which is great.
Can I just clarify that for my own thinking as I go into this, that the first 2 had eliminated dead zones except for where we max out. So, but you still had people that would move a step and not make $1, not see an increase. There'd be some steps that
I think that there was every step would see, but it was sometimes very minimal.
Okay. But with the. Home would be a stipend.
What you're currently at.
And the first variance would have an increase, but could be minimal. And it appeared in the second variance that was a larger step increase.
In the second one, it was a minimum of, I think she said 400.
$400.
And what was the cost in that 3rd one with the second variance?
It fit in with the $1.3 million.
3.1.
Over.
Yeah.
She took
3.1.
out the 161,000 for supplemental, and just with that amount of money, what could we get out of
With
it?
it's within the 3.1 million.
So even with the second variance with people making more, it's still left 3.1 million in the overall bucket.
Correct.
Okay,
She tried to spend every dollar, is
Got it.
my understanding.
perfect.
Yeah, if we were to accept, or if we were to use the second variant, we would have actually $913 left over.
That close.
She did a good job.
Party for the IBB team. I'm just kidding.
But the second,
913 of the cost of a 1%?
Cost of the variant placement to do this one.
Got it. Okay.
We're
and
all,
the second variant also included the potential 160,000 for the supplemental increase, correct?
And it also, I think it was a little over $100,000 in savings per, golly, I'm real hot tonight, for each step. Hey, I left out the last section. Never mind. So it's cheaper going further down the line. Well, all of them are cheaper going down the line, but variance 2 theoretically would allow, if there was the same type of increase, basically there'd be more money available to go towards the salary schedule each year because the step increase is less as a whole.
On the start, if you're looking at the spreadsheet, the starting salary increase, if you just change that number, the entire spreadsheet will update automatically for you. So you can see, and then she was working on putting in the scenario tab that she has at the bottom, putting a scenario thing on each one of the group spreadsheets as well, so you can look at the changes. So we're not all messing with that one tab.
I did check with her too, and her budget accounts for a 1% increase to the supplemental schedule as well, as part of the 160.
Oh, on the varied placement schedule, is it,
One or two.
sorry, varied placement number 2, was that a 1% increase from our previous salary schedule? Or just kind of, she kind of made numbers?
It's a dollar, it's not a percent, it's factored in as a dollar amount to the base.
So 1687,
Yeah,
okay.
which, I mean, theoretically is at 1%, but I don't know.
Right.
I didn't do the
But you
math
wouldn't
on
like
it.
say, here's the new salary schedule, and we're gonna do a 1% increase?
No, this.
No, because
this
that would cost
spend all the
more.
money,
Right, yeah.
Lindsay, if you'll open that document, I know you haven't decided if each team decides on which version. Let me tell you what your team directions are, and maybe it'll form your thoughts on how you want to approach this piece of it. So if you open the document, I'm going to go through your team directions. They're pretty easy, and then I think after we go through them, Lindsay, I'll drop them in your shared drive or your shared folder. So as soon as we go through these instructions and you decide sort of this one question, plus I want you to list a couple assumptions everybody should be real clear on. You're going to have, the remainder of the time today to meet with your team to decide when are you going to meet and do this work that you're getting assigned. So here are the instructions for team breakouts. So each team, there are 3 teams, should come to consensus within your team on an economic supposal. And I call that a supposal because you're not making proposals to each other. Your little team is saying, suppose we did this, right? So you need to come to consensus within your group on an economic supposal for certified staff salaries and compensation for the next school year, okay? And then your report back, which should be tomorrow at some point. If it can't be tomorrow, then we're going to schedule another day. But be prepared to share your team's supposal via a spreadsheet. And I'm going to ask Jay real quick just to verify what all contents need to be in that spreadsheet. And explain why your team feels that your supposal is a viable way to go this year on economics. So plan to tell us what considerations were discussed within your team, what your group struggled with the most, and overall what was most important to your group. Okay? And you really got to work until you have consensus. Okay? You can say what was hard to get to consensus, but until your group has consensus. Okay? And then go ahead and scroll down. Please don't get locked into your team's supposal, meaning you should not work hard on this, but you shouldn't work in a way where you feel like this is what you must have. This is what you want to come and advocate for. You're not really coming to convince anyone that it's the best thing to do. You're coming to share with the whole team why it is a possible thing to do, okay? So be flexible, even though you're going to work hard on this. So after all the supposals are presented and discussed, there'll be 3 of them, the entire IBB team will look at all that, you'll question each other, you'll understand, you'll be intrigued by what other teams did, and the entire team may choose any one of those 3 supposals to go with this year. The entire team may edit a version of one of those supposals. You may take one piece out of one supposal and one piece out of another to make your own, a combination. Or you all may look at these 3 really good supposals and it may inspire you to come up with a 4th one that no team really thought of, but the work brought you there, okay? So don't get so tied to your team's supposal that you can't give it up, okay? And then if you go ahead and scroll down a little bit, Lindsay, I'm going to just say, here are my teams. Here are you all's teams. I didn't try to overthink it too much. I have Linda, Todd, Joe, Jay. I have Lindsay, Jill, Mike, Abby, Rachel, and, should be Abby, Rachel, and Jay. Jay and John are switched around on that.
No, this is this, oh, okay.
Because I always call, I'm used to you guys behind your mask, and with your mask you look the same, so I get your names messed up. So it should have been Jay is with Abby and Rachel, and John is with Linda, Todd, and Joe. And some of that is just because, you know, Abby was feeling a little, she was saying, you know, I don't even know what to ask here. Hey, Jay's kind of the super guy on the spreadsheet. So I kind of did things like team matches like that. Make sure there's someone on each team that's got a strength on the spreadsheet, right? And then also, of course, you've got someone from the district, someone from the association on each team. So anyway, don't overthink how I did it. I kind of did it in that way. And then if you go ahead and scroll down, there are usually a couple of assumptions that everybody should know as a fact, because where you get into trouble or when we waste time is when one team comes back halfway through and said, oh, we thought this, and they were working on a wrong assumption, right? Or they came back with something that was not a right assumption. So can you guys just tell me real quick, I have some notes, what are the 5 basic assumptions every team should just consider as fact?
Is this back to our IBB training?
No, it's really back to her presentation on finances.
So like the amount of
But
money.
Linda, if you have a thought like that. Yeah, but like amount of money. But what were you thinking, Linda? Maybe you were going down a track that's helpful.
You know, is it financially possible? Is it ratifiable?
really
I mean,
good
I think
one.
some of those still play in here.
Yeah, I have a separate document I was actually going to have someone drop in your screen share, but I think it's more the whole team is going to have to use that when all 3 proposals come back. Is it feasible? And there's some subcategories under that. Is it manageable? Can we execute it? There are subcategories under that,
Does it
including
meet our
legal.
interest? Is it?
Right, and is it ratifiable, like for both sides, the board and membership? So I will send that to Lindsay to drop in the drive for you all to refer to, and you'll really refer to that when you all come back together.
Okay.
But good point.
I think some of the assumptions, at least for me, it's difficult, because the step cost is going to cost different depending on what schedule you choose. So some of those where we have across the board, we know that a 1% step in, or, you know, a 1% increase costs this much. That's not going to be the case if we're not all working off of the same salary schedule.
Right, that's another potential pro to picking one salary schedule.
I think we could add as an assumption that costs, like, these are costs that need to be considered, right? Either increased costs because there's multiple costs that you could have, right? So cost of a new salary schedule, cost of increase to the base, health insurance should not be a cost. Column movement's already built into the schedule, right? Like we
Right,
could.
those are the assumptions I'm talking about, yeah.
I was just going to say that the cost of those first 2 you said will be different
Right.
based on the schedule. So
Right.
I guess my concern is we're going to be comparing apples and oranges with our proposals.
We could be, yeah.
Is there value?
But those are still cost factors either way, right? Like there is a cost to a new salary schedule, there is a cost to increasing the base, there, right? Like,
Is there enough of a difference? You all understand those various 3 options, right, from the
Yes.
committee. My ears were sort of off because I just don't go that deep in every client's stuff, right? My stuff is this, not that. So you all have to tell me, were there enough variables that strongly change those 3 things that you feel like each group probably needs to decide amongst their group which 3 ways works? So you get the value of that, group thought, 3 group thought.
Can I backtrack a second and see if anybody from the salary schedule committee is willing to make a proposal?
Well, and what I was going to say though too is that there's technically 2 proposals in the fact that there's the hold harmless and there's the varied placement 2 is the same as it just has different dollar amounts.
it just increases.
Yeah, and the only real default difference is that it went to an amount that everybody received at least $400 as
On
a
2.
raise. On
Variance
very
2.
2. So I mean, technically, they're basically the same thing. There's just a difference in making sure that on number 2 that everybody received a $400 increase.
Was the price tag about the same?
Well, not because of the increase.
So my perception is that we have two apples and an orange.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Well,
do
and
people
I
feel
think-
passionately, and there are going to be really material differences in the two apples? If so, I recommend you work it out in your small groups.
I
If
think
not,
there.
then decide here.
I think the other fruit is keeping our existing salary schedule
Right.
and just
Adding to the
using
base.
whatever economics we have to that schedule.
It's, and to go back to Joe's, like, I have zero problem saying I am on favor of the varied, one of the,
The stipend seems to set us up for being in the same place next year.
I was going to make that comment, that
Yes, through the whole harmless.
the hold harmless, I think, to use my term from yesterday, we're borrowing trouble. Like, we get through this year, then we're faced with a pretty challenging conversation next year.
I don't think that the varied has, it's not kick the can free. There are some aspects that are, and I do think that they will pop up, but I do fully believe that this team can handle that. I think that at the footing it puts us on for, the majority of the staff going forward is very solid, and it does some great things that I think will help us out in long term. But yeah, there are some issues with our longer term staff, but I think that we can figure something out to address that.
And I think if the goal is that everybody goes home with something more, the hold harmless, like, nobody will go home with less. Some people will go home with multiple thousand more, but some people will go home with exactly
smaller.
what they've made.
But I also want to go back to, if you have to do it, we all know there's going to be pain when you make this change, but if you've got to go do it, the year that you're getting a $700 retention pay, you're going down, you're saving money in insurance, and we're addressing the main concern in the thought exchange, which is getting rid of dead zones.
And I also think that our traditional schedule that we are on right now, there's still those spots of where some people get fat raises and some people get nothing.
That's always been the case.
Jay,
Correct.
if you were to pick one, can you say what you'd pick?
Yeah, I said I would pick the varied.
One or two.
Well, I mean, to me, they're the same. I mean, it's varied too, is just got more money applied to it.
So just to clarify, our P&A has two additional schedules, one for
Non-degreed.
non-degreed and one for supplemental. And when Allison puts the cost together for the changes to those, to the salary schedule, she includes a 1%
1%.
increase to both of those schedules.
That's correct.
So we don't have to add in that cost.
Nope.
Okay. That would be,
Now, a future group could look at the
Non-degreed.
non-degreed, because there's been some rumbles about that also.
Well, so
But
when-
I think
when
we
you
have to
say you
pick
would go
that
with a
out.
varied, but you said there, she said one or two, and you said, well, there's really no difference other than dollar amount. Considering that, which would you go with and why?
I'm hesitant because I think that goes into the small group decision.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I mean, to me, there's no difference other than the starting amount.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're the same.
Varied two is just,
Start changing how much you're adding to the.
Well,
varied
so,
two is just fleshed out farther down the road than
So
the
then-
first varied version is.
so then when you had said we have two apples and an orange, do we all want to say the orange is not up for consideration?
The
That-
orange is the hold harmless, and, we have two Fiji apples.
Do you all want to unpack the three choices in your group? Do you want to unpack two choices in your group? Or do you want to decide a choice here? Unpack two choices in your group is what you're saying, Linda?
I like,
Meaning you wouldn't unpack, the hold harmless wouldn't be an option that?
Yeah, I'd get rid of the orange, nothing personal.
Does anybody disagree with getting rid of the orange?
no.
Okay, so then let's go ahead and throw these assumptions up. Thank you, Lindsay, so that we can get to work. Yep, you got what you got to spend. The supplemental schedule revision is taken out of what you have to spend? Doesn't that, what you have to spend, oh, that you got as total, right? Really what you have to spend is 3.1 once you take the supplemental out.
that's what everyone's.
Teams can consider 1 and 2, right? There's no, you don't have to consider doing increases on healthcare. It's a fact that people are going to get a $700, or you don't know yet. It's a possibility. I mean, it's just something to consider when you think
Yeah.
about overall.
As long as the SR is approved, the
Yeah.
board
John
will
and I have a
review.
question.
Yes, yes, my gosh.
John and I have been crunching some numbers, and we have figured out that John has figured out that varied placement 2 plus the proposed supplemental schedule lands us at like $1,000 below the pot that would bring us down to 10% fund balances.
That's what the
Right, so do we
913
need to break into
is.
groups is the question, if everyone's going to land on the same thing, and if we
You
need to, we
guys
should.
didn't split the atom, just, she said.
Lindsay, would you
She
add?
said, she said that an hour ago, but.
Lindsay, would you add the assumption that the
He
district
just said it a
policy
little
is not going
louder.
below 10%? That is another assumption I had on my list. What were the other assumptions? To be safe, get them out there, Rachel, and then come back to that
I
question.
can't, I have to go cry in the bathroom for a little bit.
Rachel, you had a list. I wanted to put up there that, okay, can we all, there's also
you have your
assumption that
own
column
bathroom
movement
just
is
for that?
funded.
I love
Is there
that. Say
an,
that
is there
again.
an, guys, I wanted you to have team time. So that's why I'm rushing you a little bit.
$800,000
Is there an
professional
assumption
growth?
that the column movement of 800,000 is funded?
It's already
It
funded.
is
Right, so
funded.
it's an assumption, right? In other words, like,
It is
on
not-
years that your
yeah.
work is hard, this is a good practice, and that's why it doesn't feel like you need to do it, but it's a good practice. This is what avoids disputes when your years are hard. When you don't have any money and you're gonna fight, these assumptions will be what keep you true to each other and the process. So that's an assumption, right? Are there any other important assumptions people should think about?
There was an assumption, she had how much money for a 1% raise? She had accumulated that money.
Right, but that's, go ahead.
I was just trying to keep it with regards to even increments. I believe what was 1 point,
Oh, yeah,
I wrote
she
that
was
down.
dropping that presentation.
$1.7
in-
million, something like that, it's 1.8
A
million.
1%
was.
1,331,million.
1.3 million.
But is
Yeah.
that with the current step?
That is the current setup.
1.337
Yeah.
would be a 1%, just to put when you're talking about the overall cost, because again, you're looking at that large bucket, so it gives options.
I mean, I think, and guys, look at your notes, see if there are any other assumptions that, you know, it doesn't, one group can come out and say, oh my God, we just realized blank,
So-
and then tell every other group if there's an assumption we're missing, right? And then also, the last thing I have, and I'm gonna kick it back to where you guys wanna go now that you have your assignment, is you should actually take 5 minutes when you're ready, if you're gonna break into groups, and have Jay share the columns in the spreadsheet, how to manipulate them quickly. Also, you should have a phone number for a help desk, meaning who's gonna help your team when you have a budget or a math question.
Me. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. So it almost seems like the way that she set it up, when she gave us those 3 groups on the spreadsheet, is that we can choose to keep the current salary schedule, do a 1% base and a step, you know, and supplemental, or we could choose to do a new salary schedule with a supplemental. You know what I mean? But I don't know if any of us actually want to keep the old salary schedule. And I think that's what Rachel was saying, was that it looks like there's actually just one best
Because of
solution.
health insurance not being, right, like, just because of where we are, it just didn't seem like there was a ton of wiggle room, which is the only reason I threw that out. But Stephanie's right about best practice, and if we were, you know, we need to think about it.
And by the way, it wouldn't be the worst thing if you all can come to an agreement here today or tomorrow. I don't want you to go into teams if you don't have to. I'm just going up to that point right now.
So
This would be the point you would go into.
I guess, with what Rachel is saying, Allison has costed out kind of
She's
using all of the money that
squeezed
we
everything out of the
have
turnip.
with
why would we use less?
including an increase to the base and making sure that everyone's gonna see at least $400. Allison has also kind of already created the best case scenario for us.
And I want to say that in the past, I think that what we were shown as the total to spend, we would dispute because some of us, because we were wanting to look at their reserve funds. And the board has given permission to go down to 10%, which if they're listening, I truly appreciate that. I was taken aback. I was surprised.
And I was gonna say something too, of that effect of like, thank you, because it was not as painful in the
Right.
past. I think that the way it was presented this year was very, very nice.
Well,
And
and I think
I'm glad to
knowing
hear
the
that.
work we want to do with the salary schedule to accomplish all that we wanted to do, and with the pot that we had, we would have had to start pulling things apart and picking what we were going to do. So this was great.
I do want to, we are deficit spending, so I just want everybody here to, again, we don't know, as Allison said, exactly what's coming, but the board's reserve on that is then what position does that put us in for next year? I don't think it's a massive deficit spend, but it's got some magnitude, so
We
It's
do
not
know
a
we're
bad thing
losing
to put on
enrollment,
the,
and we do
Yeah.
know that
So just-
insurance costs are not
I
going
want
to be as
everybody
friendly.
here to just be,
Lindsay, it's not a
Remind
bad
me.
thing to put on the list of facts. Assumptions are facts, and it is a fact that you're deficit spending. It is a
Yeah.
fact that enrollment's down. Because it's not the worst thing as you guys get, years into this, to look back and see what was going on the year that we were able to do this. That's
Right.
different this year, that helps you talk to your constituents.
I-
Right.
and the fact of that, we are spending more now, but it will have a savings component to it.
it will have a step movement, will have a savings going forward.
Correct.
But, and just to flip the coin over, but the supplemental salary, the additions to that will also continue to go up each year. So the 161,000 is the gift that keeps giving. And I think that team did an outstanding job, so I'd like to give credit to them because it's a challenging hill that they went up.
And I know we call it deficit spending, and I don't want to say, well, isn't it just deficit budgeting because we haven't spent it yet? So maybe the hope is that in the last 3 years, and I know that we've had less spending because of COVID, we had positions we didn't fill. But in the last couple of years, we have ended with surpluses because I think they do a really good job of budgeting. And as we've seen, that other districts are having major issues with that. So we're very happy that you guys that they do kind of conservatively budget. So I guess the hope is that maybe we'll break even since we've had surpluses in the past. I don't know.
We can have a
certainly
hope.
wish.
We can hope.
And healthcare news was really a good thing here today.
Now, just remind people that we got to the savings on healthcare because of, in part, our health clinic, because of people proactively doing things to improve their wellness. And we get cost savings also through the health clinic and prescription drugs. And so that focus, everything that people do to promote personal wellness helps.
And the
us as
health
a whole.
clinic has been an extremely valuable addition
Yeah.
to this district and continues to do a great job. And when it really comes down to healthcare, with that clinic, and the number comes down to the number of claims. So it's the number of claims that really determines how much money we spend each year.
Yep.
Where do you all want to go from here today? And you do have tomorrow set aside.
So I still need to review and go over the draft that I did to memorialize our consensus from yesterday. So I would suggest that we take a break, come back and go over that. And then I was looking at what we did last year in preparation for tomorrow, which might not be necessary, but we did a little chart of our work that was TAs and collective commitments so that district reps could take that to the board and say, here's our one-page summary of our work. And so that NEA could take that to our professional employees and say, here's our one-page summary. So if I could get help just noting that out, then I can put together that chart and share it, and we can work on that just to make sure we remember everything that we've done over 10 long meetings.
And if folks are not going to break out today, because it's an exercise you don't feel you need, it sounds like. I think we do need to at least do our thumbs on consensus on, so everybody's clear on which economic package everyone has consensus on. Whatever the best way is to articulate that, whoever feels most comfortable saying what you think everyone's in agreement on.
I have zero problems with that. I think
Thank you.
that overall, the varied placement 2 is pretty much the thought process, the way to go. And just to official, I throw out a motion that we take a thumbs on the varied placement 2 going further.
I would second that motion.
Thumbs. You love it? I bet you there's lots of up thumbs on this one. Or here. Good, good. Awesome. Okay.
So just, I think, good thing to talk about here too is, I think it's really hard to ratify since we do that through SMSD emails in the summer, but I think we can put things in place where we can do that as early August as we can, maybe working with the communications department or through building admins to put something in summer contacts of, hey, there's information on your contract. I haven't even discussed that, but just throwing that out. I know that it'd be nice to know from Russ and Allison what's an ideal date to have that ratification vote finalized, to have be able to put in place everything so we don't have to retroactively pay. Yes, we ratify and then the board ratifies.
We haven't talked about this, but because there's the giant PLC, would there be an option, of having it?
When would be the earliest you would be able to ratify? I think it's going to be very challenging. I won't even speak for you. When do you think your ratification date would be? Because that will determine on retro and Russ and the payment.
Typically, we would start when returning teachers return.
And the good news is, the way we do ratify now, it's instantaneous vote. And we also, once we know that, once we hit a magic number where enough people have voted to say mathematically it's passed, then we usually pass that on. I pass it on to you. So I would
Friday, May
think,
6th, or May 5th? Sorry,
is that our first day back?
Friday, August 5th. I said May.
The
Yeah,
pay-
that was
So
tragic.
payroll for August 5th is for, that deadline, it hits that August.
We need to get Allison for payroll information
Okay.
because she would be able to tell us how that would impact if it were ratified on the 5th of August or 6th of August. Yeah, that would be helpful for us.
Well, I think we did 3 days. We would start it on the 5th, end it on the 8th. But as soon as we knew, we would tell.
The 5th is a Thursday or Friday?
Oh, was that the Friday? So
Friday.
then we probably wanted to carry through the Tuesday.
Yeah, we need to know, I think it's way better if we don't have to do retro pay. It messes people up
It's
forever.
way better for payroll as well, but I
Yeah.
can tell you, they've got their timeline, and so that's why Michael went to get her to see.
So let's say we needed to bump it up early. I think it would be good if the district could come back and help us get that message out.
I know in the past, we had through communications sent out like a text, like they do for snow days of like, hey, your ratification vote is out, you need to.
And what I'd like to
Respond
do
to that.
is like, keep it open longer, just open that window earlier. So,
That's your call. I want to ask Allison, to avoid the retro payment through payroll, when would be the earliest ratification that you would need on a contract to start the year off fresh payment-wise?
Well, the majority of teachers, their first paycheck is that September 20th, but we do have counselors that start the month earlier, and so they'll begin that payroll on August 5th.
And we're talking about 25 counselors, 25 high school counselors are the ones that come in early.
Thereabouts, yeah.
I have a hard time, I guess if we could allow, the 5th is a work day. I'm so glad that was not me, because that's usually me doing that.
That was amazing.
I think as long as we could hold the ratification through that Friday, the 5th through 4 o'clock or something.
So if it were ratified on Friday, August 5th, would that be okay for outside of counselors, would that be for the rest of the district, which is start off on a regular schedule?
Could you get counselors in if we did it by that date?
That's going to be very tight.
I don't think we can do it any earlier than that. So, in fact, I would feel more comfortable if we said through the 8th, if it's not going to impact counselors anyways.
But counselors, Todd, help me on this. Counselors will be back before August 5th, correct?
But you can hand,
Correct, for
You-
those 20, correct.
yeah.
We could for those.
yeah, you can hand,
Just a lot
hand
easier
do
to-
25 people.
It would be a lot easier if we could have it done before August 5th, but I understand. I would think if we have it August 5th, since it's only 25, hopefully we could get that done within the day.
And we would start on September 20th with the appropriate amount of money for the 22-23 school year.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're going to, okay, I need you all, I need my group of people to tell me, do you think that if we opened the vote back last week of July, and people could vote all the way up until 4 o'clock?
on Friday.
We may have way before that, the number that we need to let you know. You know what I mean?
You're thinking giving them 2 full weeks.
I think that and I think that, like Jill and her exec board can work with the district as far as can we get principals to remind people that, just
Well,
a
I think-
tagline in there, that ratification vote, open to every certified member, is open now till August 5th. And then,
I think if communications just sends out a text, because along with the email,
I just
That
don't
says
want
that
you to
it's
deal
open.
with 5 people that feel like they're disenfranchised and didn't get to.
well, no, that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think that if we're hitting it on Facebook, we're hitting it on through communication through NEA, we have the district push,
Yeah.
a text and an email.
I don't want an extra email from principals, I just assume that's how you communicate with your people, that it just would be, just a note in you're already there. Also, we'll work with our building reps, we'll ask them to, maybe our building reps are the ones to send out, a all-school alert, hey, voting is open.
What is the number that what percentage have to vote yes to ratify?
Above 50%.
So that,
Above 50% of the bargaining unit has to vote, and it has to ratify anything above 50%.
So, is it possible to not open the vote, but at the PLC Institute, since we have about 60% of staff attending or something like that, to at least share the plan or to go over some, to take 10 minutes and just go over a little information or something? I don't know.
I think if you could
You just have a large pool of people there sitting in a
I
room
think
together.
if you can just say, hey, the voting window will be here, and we communicate to everyone what they're voting on and how to access that. So just, hey, look for that. That vote will be open late summer break through August 5th. Everybody, whether you're a member or not, check your school email as you're getting closer to coming back.
Yeah. And then I suggest maybe Rachel and a small group or whatever could meet tomorrow to finalize the
Chart?
the document.
Yeah, I need, which we can break if we want. I don't think it'll take too long. I have 2 things. I want to talk through my thought process on language for the P&A that establishes that pilot program. And then also, a while ago, Russ had made a plea to remove outdated language in the P&A that impacts the March payroll date. I'll explain that, but it was not something we noticed, and I told Jill, I think to me this is a, we always include in our notice letters any cleanup or stuff like that, so I wanted to share his request. So let me share my screen here, and I'll quickly go over that. All right, so what you are looking at here is the same red line draft of Article 12 that we previously reviewed. So I just pulled that same red line. My thought when I was working on this last night is this is a pilot program, so I don't want to change or mess with any current P&A language. I want to leave it all there, preserved exactly how it is. So that if we completely go a different direction for elementary PLC time or want to tweak it, we don't have a nightmare language situation on our hands. We're just going to revert back to what we had unless we otherwise negotiate. So what I did is, under the plan time section, I added a subsection that establishes a 22-23 pilot program for guarded PLC time at the elementary level, again specifying that includes pre-K through 6. And then I broke it into kind of a couple sections. This first paragraph here makes it very clear that it is just for the 22-23 school year. And then it suspends the provisions regarding weekly staff meetings with respect to pre-K through 6 employees. And says, instead of what our current language says about staff meetings, for pre-K through 6, the language is going to be, and I highlighted the change, staff meetings may be but are not required to be held every other week or twice per month. And then every other word in that provision reads exactly the same. And then it goes on to address how plan time is going to be different for the school year. And it says that we are suspending the requirement to have at least 230 minutes per week within regular student contact hours. And what I needed here was, I think we still need a guarantee of a minimum number of plan time minutes, but I understand that is different depending on which option for plan time and PLC meeting you choose. So I wondered if whatever the option is with the least plan time, can we build in that guarantee?
And that was 170, wasn't that what we said yesterday?
PLC.
Yeah, it was 200.
Well, it's hard to do it weekly because
It's hard to do it weekly because on some of the options, one week is 200, but the next week is 250.
But I think you would just say,
At least 200?
at least, because her phrasing is you will have at least 200.
Okay. Weekly.
Yep.
I just,
I would rather,
I just don't want
Is it
somebody
better to
like,
not do it?
oh, so this week.
Or should
I'm
we
only
say
gonna- I don't know.
between, or the parties recognize that with these schedules, each week, professional employees will have between X and X? Is that a better way to do it?
can we say, rather than doing for a total number of monthly minutes
Yeah.
of? Because it would be.
Do it by month?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, that's easier.
Okay.
yeah.
Or every 4 weeks.
And I think you need to say that you still say it varies each week, depending on the option that you choose as well. But a
4-week average.
4-week,
900 minutes.
4-week average of 900 minutes.
Yeah. And then option 4, they get 920. So, or that's what they currently have. Like 230 every week is 920 every 4.
Rachel, would you want you want 900 and then delete her within
Yes.
contract hours?
Well, and if they pick option 1, 2, or 4, then they have to adhere to what those options say, which, this much plan time and whatnot. So, I mean, I think that helps.
Okay, so we have 900 per month, varied each week, but a minimum of 900 minutes per month within contract hours. And then I just added a paragraph that says for this school year, professional employees will have a plan time and PLC meeting schedule under one of the 4 options as elected by their assigned PLC group. The schedule will be elected by each elementary PLC group on a per quarter basis. I added with any needed support from the building principal, just in case there's a group that's having trouble or can't decide and wants that support. And then I added that instead of trying to like nail down, you must PLC this many minutes, I just am saying you need to abide by this schedule. So you don't have the choice to not do your PLC time. You need to abide by the schedule. And then just one final provision that says that this will automatically sunset as of June 30th, 2023, which will be the end of this negotiated agreement. So essentially, it is deleted out as of that date unless we otherwise negotiate.
One, and I don't know, so not all teams have the option to select all 4 options. So for example, if I am an art teacher at Shawnee, and I can't just say, oh, I'm gonna, I think I just think there's some concerns around some of these specialty ones where, so if I'm an art teacher and I want to, collaborate with other art teachers, and I want to say, but I don't want to do it during staff meeting, I want to plan during staff meeting, and now my principal has to set that up for me to get me collaboration time during the school day with other art teachers on a rotating schedule that's different by building.
I think I know what you're asking, so.
Just a concern I have, and I just wanted to bring that.
Yep, so let's make sure we have agreement. I think what we're doing is a principal would be obligated to find PLC time within that building. And so sped teachers would PLC with sped teachers, specials would PLC with specials. What other groups do we have? That, right? So any outside or any additional PLC groups would be done on a case-by-case, as we can basis.
Do specials teachers currently PLC with other specials teachers in other buildings?
That once a month specialized PD, they do, but now this is kind of like coinciding with that.
When does
so-
the once a month specialized PD happen? Or like, is it that?
It's a staff meeting. It's going to be one of these staff meetings that's designated now as collaboration time or whatever you want to call it. It's typically the second staff meeting time of the month, so,
Okay.
your second and fourth time.
Yeah. Okay.
So there'll be some groups that are limited on what they can do based on the schedule of the teachers or the employees who happen to be in their PLC, right?
I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that, because we're providing the same type of
Oh, right,
PLC at the
Yeah.
building level
Yeah,
as we are for like a gen ed teacher.
got it.
Is that right? Is that accurate?
I think so. Part of the idea is that you would have job-like, you know what I mean? I just wanted to make sure that there are some nuances there, and I don't want to put any principal or any staff member in a bad position based upon the way it's written.
I think the existing comparison would be Jay, right? I mean, there's one of him.
There's no comparison with me.
Okay, well, somebody
For a
like
lot of
Jay.
reasons.
Well, like welding, or not welding, woods, automotive, they have, I'm the only welding teacher in the district, so I don't have, my PLC is me, and it's just me talking to myself. Whereas woods, there's, each of the high school has one where they group and they PLC. Automotive, there's 3 of them, that kind of thing. And it's difficult even with the structure the high school has now sometimes to get together. And that's where the virtual is great.
For the specials teachers in one building, PE, art, music, library, what time of day would they all PLC together?
So, I can tell you what I do.
Sure.
So right now, I pull because every special teacher has 8:10 to 8:30 already designated as a common plan time in the building. It's like non-negotiable as the ABCD schedule. And that's in addition to what their 50 minutes daily. So I just pull them all off of arrival duty one day a week, so 7:50 to 8:30 once a week, we're able to all meet together.
Okay, cool. the plans on there, if you want to scroll.
Oh,
I know they all say 45 minutes PLC during plan, and the plans are technically 50. So are you saying 45 so that like people can travel to and from wherever they're meeting for their PLC?
Well, because staff meeting is 45 minutes.
Okay,
You're just trading
so if staff meeting is 45 minutes, then do we need to adjust the total monthly? Like I was counting for a week where you're giving a planned time to PLC and you're making up your planned time during staff meeting, I was counting that still as 250 minutes a week of plan, because you had 4 days of your normal 50-minute plan and 1 day of a staff meeting plan, and I was counting that as 50. But I guess the staff meeting is only 45? So you're saying, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that,
It's 45 minutes after typical contract.
right.
So if you started, depending on when your dismissal got done.
That's true. You could start, I mean, are there teachers that are done before 3:30 with dismissal?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So
I
then
mean,
we
and
could-
if it was a concern, you could just pull the few staff members who you're having an issue with off dismissal early. if you
Okay.
do.
We always have these rational answers, and I wish you could spread that around.
Don't share my number. Just joking. Always happy to help. No, I mean, if you have a staff member who you're not meeting it with, I think, sometimes I don't realize it, so hopefully you have that relationship with your administrator to say, just FYI, I am missing this time, and then they could come up with a way to, and additionally giving back that 7:50, 8 o'clock time to most staff members most days, hopefully also balances some of that. I know it's not the same, but
already reviewed.
it does cushion some things.
Nope. Okay, this is I think our last cleanup item. Is everyone familiar with getting their March payroll like on a weird date? And that's because the way Russ explained it to me, and apparently it's a big burden for them every single year, in the days of paper checks, they wanted employees to be able to get their check before they left on a break or something that fell before the 20th. But now, because of electronic deposits, payroll can process on the 20th day of the month or the weekday immediately preceding that every single month, regardless of breaks. And so he asked that the requirement about what happens when there's a non-working day on the 20th, that it goes to the working day before, whatever, that be eliminated, so that they can always just process on the 20th or the weekday immediately preceding the 20th and not have to process early in March. Does anyone have a concern? He says they also get lots of calls on the 20th about where's my pay, and they're like, well, you already got it. So,
I think it's good for helping people budget if it's
Yeah.
consistent to the same time every month.
it is. Okay.
To get it early, but then.
I was gonna say, it's
When you
very
have
nice
to,
when you're like getting ready to go on a trip.
Stretch a little bit longer than
Yeah.
this month, it's not.
And it's a burden on payroll. They really have to move.
Can I ask one more question about the thing before this?
Yes.
Okay, so we would have, or the elementary school teachers would have 2 all-teacher staff meetings a month, but when would you have the specialized PD? Would that be a different? No, so there would, okay, so then really only 1 Tuesday a month would be an all-staff meeting? Oh.
So, from my understanding,
Okay.
and so like, they've already sent out like the schedule for next year, and it's like the second staff meeting a month, this is specialized PD, that would be specialized PD/PLC.
Okay,
But that contradicts.
and then there'll be 2 other days, 2 other Tuesdays a month where you have an all-staff meeting?
You have an all-staff meeting available, right, so,
Oh, like you could have it?
yes.
Okay. So those specialized PDs, those teachers have to go to those, right?
Well, that was kind of like what I was trying to bring up.
Right.
One of my concerns was that you're basically, the option 1 potentially isn't as available because they don't have that opportunity to meet with their job-like people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
those groups are gonna have to consider that when they pick their schedule, right?
I don't know the answer.
I think we need some clarification on that.
So it seems like if you're an art teacher, you would have 2 Tuesdays a month with the all-staff meeting, right? And then 1 Tuesday a month where you're doing a specialized PD with art teachers from around the district.
PLC.
Well, she
So
calls
that's a verdict.
No,
It's a horizontal.
Yeah, it's horizontal, and so it's for, like, all of the ELL teachers can get together, and all of the early childhood staff is available, and
And so
I would
what
agree.
you're saying is if an art teacher's like, well, I don't want to do my PLCing after school, then they wouldn't even attend those specialized PDs. That's what she's saying.
well, I'm saying that is potentially opening up this misunderstanding or concern around
Right.
that.
I'm understanding now. So specialized PD for our specialty teachers is occurring how often again?
Once a month.
Once a month.
Once a month. And your thinking is that's one of their, yep. I think I
One of
would-
their 2 staff meetings. So then they wouldn't,
No.
One of their PLCs.
One of the designated
Yeah.
PLC times. Which I think is, I only really know like the Northwest area and what my specialist, so I can't speak to that. But I know a lot of that is a collaborative effort, where they meet on WebEx or together and do, but
So then I would see that they.
like
with-
speech pathologists and, there's a lot of, especially like
with-
that, social
they
workers.
Chose the PLCing during staff meeting time. Then one of the Tuesdays a month, they would horizontally PLC with their job alike peers. The other staff meeting time that was PLC, they would PLC with building alike. So like all the specialist teachers would PLC during that time,
if they chose that one.
if they chose that
I
one, yeah.
would say it would be a highly suggested, this would probably be your best option for your group.
Or they could continue a second horizontal, right? Like they could continue, like pre-K teachers are always trying to get more time together. And there's not a team of pre-K in my building, I have one, you know what I mean? So, if that plan A, and they're like, I don't want to have to do it during that staff meeting time, it says I get to pick. Now the building principal is potentially required to find a way to make that happen. That was just my concern, so I just,
Yeah.
I think, to me, the group could have a suggested of the specialties really look at these options, the best fit.
so does there need to be language, and I don't want to have people overstep on the administrative side or anything that says to the greatest extent the schedule allows, or?
I'm struggling a little bit with that. This is kind of what I was bringing up with SPED yesterday, and I felt like my response was SPED teachers need to figure it out, and kind of got fluffed off a little bit, and then we're spending 15, 20 minutes, and I'm not saying that it's not a valuable conversation, but I also felt like this exact same conversation about SPED was valuable.
You need some sort of guidance or something to, those teams about how, the best way to structure.
Process.
Well, I think we're gonna have a presentation anyways before they pick, right? That's what we had talked about, was either a presentation or a video explaining the options. And I think it would be easy to incorporate within that if you fit into this category, we would highly suggest that you talk about this option with your group because of the constraints outside of XYZ, and that this would be, in our opinion, this is the best fit for your group to keep your horizontal meetings and stuff like that.
Does this group believe that we need to have those horizontal monthly meetings with those specialty groups? The reason I ask that is if we can agree with that, then we would have that schedule, that we know that we would want our specialty teachers participating in that monthly horizontal PLC. And then, like Jay said, once we get to where they're choosing, that's just a fact, that we want you to do that and have that guide your choice as to which option you choose.
I think so.
Does every elementary building have the 8:10 to 8:30 time free for specials teachers?
It's my understanding that's a non-negotiable, so I
Got
can't,
it.
I don't know if it gets used different ways but that is how it is presented to me, from my
Okay.
understanding.
I'm picking up that this group thinks that we can work it out at the building level.
Oh, I think we can, I just
Okay.
wanted to
We
bring.
just need to be aware.
I just
Okay.
need to be, I wanted everyone to be aware that this could potentially, you know what I mean? Be a barrier for some people, and I didn't know if there was, the way it was written, if that makes it clear, or,
Yeah, they're like, yeah.
I am gonna step out and then I
Yeah.
guess, tomorrow you guys plan on meeting?
We can talk afterward.
Okay, and then I'll check in with you.
Yeah. I doubt we'll need you tomorrow, though. I'll let you know for sure.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Congrats on getting it done.
Yeah.
Great work.
So I think we just need a game plan for what we're going to do about this issue that's been,
Something that says for elementary specials who meet in feeder pattern PLCs or across district PLCs need to take that into consideration and collaborate when choosing the best option for your PLC to function, to
So only
work.
options 2 and 4 actually have PLCs during staff meeting time.
Yeah, should consider options 2 or 4.
okay.
And then that's one thing in this pilot that I think will come back if we have to tweak next year, or whoever has to tweak.
So we're all coming back tomorrow?
What are we doing tomorrow?
Let's go out in the hallway and talk about it so that group can. We're done,
I didn't know if we needed to like.
Well, my thought process